Hi, I'm Manfred. On Thanksgiving, my parents called me ungrateful, to my face, in front of everyone. But that wasn't the real betrayal. The real betrayal was years in the making. Like how they drained my college fund to bankroll my stepbrother, or how they deleted me from the family montage, like I never existed. I stayed quiet for years, but not anymore. I showed up 38 minutes late, not by accident, on purpose. I figured if I walked in after everyone was already buzzed from wine and carbs, maybe I'd blend into the background and escape the usual charade. I was wrong. The second I stepped inside my father's house, the house I grew up in, the one that looked nothing like it used to, everything paused just long enough for me to feel it. That slight shift in air, the half-second of delayed greetings, eyes flicking toward me and away. People smiled, but their eyes didn't. My stepmother, Marlene, made her way over in heels too high for comfort and arms open too wide. "There she is," she said, all sugar. "We were just talking about you." Liar. I let her hug me, a quick shoulder tap that smelled like department store perfume and control. I spotted Beckett across the room, already holding court with two uncles and a family friend from church. He lifted his whiskey glass in my direction, like I was someone he vaguely remembered from high school. I scanned the room for Sorrel. She was by the kitchen island, laughing. Too loud, too perfect. She looked like she belonged here. I didn't. They'd made a shrine to Thanksgiving. Table settings with golden leaves, personalized place cards, even a pie bar. I bet Marlene paid someone to stage it. Nothing here looked like family, just branding. I moved toward the dining room and caught pieces of conversation that had nothing to do with me. Someone's real estate deal, Beckett's promotion, Harlan's retirement speech at the VFW. Not one person asked me how I was doing, not that I expected them to. Then came the toast. Marlene clinked her wine glass and stood up. "Before we eat," she began, "I just want to say how thankful I am for all of you. This year has been challenging, and yet here we are. Stronger, closer, and more united than ever." My jaw tightened. She turned her gaze toward the long table. "Let's raise a glass to this incredible family, to those who show up, to those who contribute, and yes, even to the ungrateful ones." The table erupted in laughter. I felt the blood rush to my ears. I didn't look at anyone. I didn't have to. I knew exactly who she meant. No one said a word. No one stopped her. They just drank. I didn't touch my glass. Instead, I stared down at the plate in front of me and wished I hadn't come. My father cleared his throat and changed the subject. Classic Harland. Let it pass. Avoid the conflict. Pretend it never happened. "We've got turkey, 3 kinds of stuffing," he said. "Let's dig in." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I smiled, just barely. Half an hour later, over dessert, it got worse. Marlene was 3 glasses deep by then, her tongue looser. "You know," she said to no one in particular, "Maddie's probably at home with her books and her cats when she's not lawyering. Isn't that right, dear?" I bit down on the inside of my cheek. Beckett chimed in, the smirk already in place. "Saving the world one angry email at a time." A few polite chuckles floated around, but mostly the room tensed. Not enough to stop anything, just enough to feel awkward for 5 seconds. Then they moved on. Like they always do. I didn't say a word. That's the thing about this family. They don't stab you in the back. They smile and do it face to face. And when you flinch, you're too sensitive. I took a sip of water, my hand steady even if my chest wasn't. I scanned the room. Every detail of this house had been redone, modernized, sterilized. Not one photo of me on the walls. But Beckett's face was everywhere. Graduations, vacations, a ribbon-cutting ceremony. His success was the family's pride. Mine was an inconvenience. I knew better than to speak up. When I did, it always ended the same way. Harland with that disappointed sigh, Marlene's fake concern, Beckett's smirk, Sorrel's silence. They had their roles, and I was cast as the difficult one, the outsider, the one who couldn't let go. But something shifted tonight. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. It was silence, sharp, cold, absolute. I didn't belong here. And maybe that wasn't a tragedy. Maybe that was the freedom I'd been avoiding. So I smiled. I lifted my glass, not to them but to myself, and made a silent promise. Never again. I set my glass down with more grace than I felt. They didn't notice. Or maybe they did and chose not to care. Either way, I was done expecting acknowledgement. Harlan cleared his throat and stood, fork tapping gently against his wine glass. "Before dessert," he began, the room quieting with trained obedience. "I'd like to say a few words. It's Thanksgiving, after all." God, here we go. "Family is the cornerstone of legacy," he said, staring straight ahead. "And legacies, well, they don't build themselves. They require sacrifice, commitment, loyalty." Marlene nodded approvingly beside him, her hands folded in her lap like a smug debutante. "We've taken steps recently to ensure that everything we've worked for, everything we've built, will stay in the right hands," he continued. I felt my stomach drop. He didn't say my name. Not once. But I could feel the omission like a slap. He listed Beckett's new business expansion, Sorrell's thriving restaurant, their shared values, and their dedication to the family vision. No mention of the firm I built from scratch. No note of my pro bono work. No sign I'd ever mattered. "And those who walk away from the family," he added, "shouldn't expect the family to walk with them." Beckett smiled, slow and lazy, like he'd been waiting for this. Sorrell looked down at her plate. No one else flinched. I wanted to scream, wanted someone to say, "That's not fair." But no one did. They were all in on it. Just when I thought I'd hit my quota of humiliation for the night, the lights dimmed. "We have a little surprise," Marlene trilled, rising. "A video tribute. 40 years of family memories." I barely breathed as the screen flickered to life. Photos began to fade in. Harlan in uniform, Marlene pregnant with Sorrell, Beckett in soccer gear. Christmas mornings, beach vacations, dance recitals. But not one image of me. Not one. A full decade vanished, like I never existed in this family at all. And then, briefly, a group photo at a backyard barbecue. There I was, behind everyone else, blurred, unnamed. A decorative extra. A kid at the end of the table whispered, "Who's that lady?" My chest constricted, my hands curled into fists beneath the napkin. I wasn't forgotten, I was erased. It wasn't just neglect, it was precision, a calculated deletion. The lights came back on. Applause filled the room. No one looked at me. They all moved on. I sat frozen, surrounded by smiles that felt like knives. The laughter and chatter returned like I hadn't just watched myself be scrubbed out of my own life. I excused myself from the table. In the bathroom mirror, I saw it. Not sadness. Something colder. Not anger. Something deeper. Recognition. They didn't see me because they didn't want to. Because seeing me meant acknowledging everything they'd done. Everything they'd taken. This wasn't about being left out of a video or a dinner toast. It was about being written out of a family, page by page, until I didn't even qualify as a footnote. When I returned to the table, dessert had been served. Pumpkin pie, whipped cream, perfectly cut slices like everything else in this choreographed charade. No one asked where I'd gone. I picked up my fork and stared at the plate. I didn't taste a thing, because while they laughed and talked and praised each other, I sat in silence with one thought repeating over and over in my head. I'm not one of them anymore. Maybe I never was. I left my plate untouched, excused myself as quietly as I could, and walked down the hall to the guest room, the one they still called the office, though nothing important had ever been worked on in it. I sat on the edge of the futon, heels still on, eyes fixed on the beige carpet. That's when the memories started to bleed in. There was another night, years ago, that felt eerily like this one. My law school graduation. I had walked across that stage alone. Everyone else had rows of cheering parents, siblings holding signs, girlfriends crying behind phone cameras. My chair sat empty. I kept telling myself they must be late, or stuck in traffic, but no, they never came. Later, Marlene told me they had dinner plans for Beckett's birthday. We couldn't miss it. He's only 30 once. That day, I learned exactly where I ranked in this family. Below convenience. The applause from that graduation echoed in my head, as if mocking me, clapping for someone who had no one there to hear it. I opened my purse and pulled out my phone, scrolling without looking, just needing to move. Anything to silence the echo. That's when I saw the email. It had come in months after graduation, from the bank. The college fund my mother had set aside for me, money she worked double shifts to save, was gone. Transferred out, signed off by Harland. I had called him, voice shaking. His response? Beckett had an opportunity. He needed a push. You're smart. You'll figure it out. No apology, no remorse. Just the same dismissive tone he used when I scraped my knee as a kid, and he told me to walk it off. When I told Marlene, she shrugged. What's done is done, sweetheart. Dwelling won't bring the money back. I ended up taking out private loans and working 2 jobs my first year. I kept the emails, the statements, the proof. Not for revenge, at least not back then, but because some part of me needed confirmation that it wasn't all in my head, that it happened, that I wasn't crazy. But I let it go. I convinced myself they made a tough decision for the family. I swallowed the betrayal and buried the rage. Now I saw it clearly. It wasn't one betrayal, it was a pattern. And I had been taught to stay silent so long, I forgot what it felt like to call something what it was. The truth? They stole from me. Not just money, not just a seat at the table. They stole my place, my voice, my belonging. I stood up and caught my reflection in the window. The woman staring back at me looked composed, but I could see the cracks behind her eyes. Cracks that had been spidering out for years. I wasn't weak. I had survived without them. Built something from ashes they pretended never existed. And tonight, something shifted for good. They wanted a version of me that played along, smiled, accepted crumbs, and called it love. But I'm not that woman anymore. I opened my encrypted cloud folder, one I hadn't touched in years, and skimmed through the old documents. College fund bank logs, notarized signatures, screenshots of Beckett's startup site from the same month my fund disappeared. I hovered over the contact labeled Delphine. She was the only one in this family who ever treated me like a person. And if anyone still had the guts to speak the truth, it would be her. I tapped her name and typed, "Can we talk tomorrow?" My thumb hovered a second longer than it needed to. Then I hit send. The morning light made everything in my apartment look softer than it really was. I stared at my phone. The silence after that sent message growing heavier by the hour. Then it rang. Sorrel. I hesitated. My first instinct was to let it go to voicemail, but some stubborn part of me needed to hear what she had to say. Maybe I wanted to give her one last chance. "Hey," she said, all breezy and false, like she hadn't sat silent through my erasure last night. "Just wanted to check in. How are you feeling after, the big dinner?" I laughed, once, flat. "Is that what we're calling it? Dinner?" A pause. "Look, I know it got weird." "You knew," I said, cutting her off. "Don't pretend you didn't." There was a long silence. Then she sighed. "Yeah, I knew. I've known for a long time." I closed my eyes. That hurt more than I expected. "And you said nothing." "What was I supposed to do, Maddie? Start a war? It wouldn't have changed anything. I just wanted peace." Peace. That word again. "You didn't want peace," I said quietly. "You wanted comfort. There's a difference." She didn't argue, just whispered, "I'm sorry," like it would undo the years of complicity. I ended the call without another word. I wasn't angry. Not really. Just done. Done waiting for people to grow a spine. 2 hours later, I stood in front of Delphine's door. She opened it before I could knock. "You came," she said. No surprise in her voice, just something steady, like she'd been expecting this moment for years. I stepped inside, and her living room felt like a museum of things the rest of the family had tried to forget. Old photos, dusty books, a framed letter in my mother's handwriting. Delphine didn't waste time. "I kept everything," she said, walking to a wooden box beside the bookshelf. "Because I knew one day you'd come looking for the truth." She handed me a folder. Inside, bank transfer receipts, dated 2 weeks before Beckett's launch. Signatures, account numbers, legal documents, and then my mother's original will. It was right there, clear as daylight. The fund was meant exclusively for my education, not to be touched under any circumstance. I felt the room tilt slightly. "And this?" I asked, holding up a yellowed sheet of lined paper. "Notes," she said. "I wrote them down after conversations with your father, when he started rewriting history." "You never said anything." "You weren't ready," she said, her voice steady. "But now I think you are." I didn't cry. I thought I might. But all I felt was something settling, like truth had weight, and it had just landed in my hands. Back home, I laid everything out on the kitchen table, scanned every page, matched signatures, checked dates. There was no more room for doubt. This wasn't neglect. This was deliberate. They didn't forget me. They removed me. One decision, one story, one erasure at a time. I opened my laptop, pulled up my legal notes, and began building a timeline. Not out of revenge, but to remember. To put the story back together the way it really happened. They wanted peace. I wanted the truth. And for the first time in years, I felt steady. No anxiety, no spiraling. Just direction. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened, I'd be the one writing it. 2 mornings later, a courier envelope slid under my apartment door. No knock, no warning. Just silence and pressure, neatly packaged. Inside was a letter from Marlene's legal assistant. The language was polished, professional, like someone trying too hard to sound polite while handing you a knife. In the interest of maintaining harmony, it read, Ms. Manfred Renly is invited to voluntarily step away from the family trust and estate planning process. Such a gesture would reflect goodwill and understanding of broader family dynamics. Goodwill, understanding. They always used soft words to dress up sharp things. I read it twice. Then again. Then I printed a copy, pulled out a pen, and signed. Below the line, I added by hand, I don't want a cent from people who never wanted me. No ceremony, no lawyer, no audience, just truth. I folded it once, slid it into a plain envelope, and left it on my kitchen table. My mind drifted back, uninvited, to a different kind of envelope, one that never came in time. 2 years ago, I was in court when I saw Marlene's name flash on my phone. The text was short. Your mom had a stroke. We're at St. Vincent's, no urgency, no context. By the time I arrived, the nurses were changing the linens. I never got to say goodbye. A soft-spoken woman in scrubs looked at me and said, She kept asking if you were on your way. Those words still haunt me. I walked out of that hospital feeling like I'd lost 2 people, my mother, and any last illusion I had about what this family was. Later that night, Marlene told me it was just one of those things. She said, I didn't think it was that serious. You were busy with work. And Harland? He never brought it up again. Like grief should come with an expiration date. I've forgiven a lot of things in my life, but not that. Never that. Back in the present, I stood by the window, envelope in hand. The city looked calm. Cars humming by, people walking dogs, rain beginning to mist the sidewalks. I held the signed waiver between my fingers. It didn't feel like surrender. It felt like relief. For years, I thought letting go would make me weak. That walking away meant I'd lost. Now I knew better. Staying would have broken me. Leaving saved me. I slipped on my coat, walked 2 blocks to the courthouse mailbox, and dropped it in. No tracking, No return address, just a clean cut. I didn't look back, didn't hesitate. I went home, made tea, sat in silence, and for the first time in years, the silence wasn't hollow. It was mine. 3 days after Thanksgiving, I sat in a small glass-walled office across from my attorney. A legal pad rested between us, filled with notes I'd been adding for years without realizing it. Receipts, dates, patterns. She flipped through the pages I brought, Delphine's documents, my mother's will, and the transfer logs that sealed everything. "This isn't a fight," she said, tapping a page with her pen. "This is a statement." I leaned back. "Then let's make it loud." She didn't smile. Neither did I. Later that afternoon, I opened my laptop and drafted one email, just one. But it would land like a bomb. 2. Every blood relative still breathing. Every in-law who ever fake smiled through a betrayal. Every lawyer and advisor who'd helped bury the truth. Subject: I thought you should see this. Attached were 4 PDFs bank statements with highlighted transfers, a scan of my mother's original will, screenshots of Beckett's company timeline, the guest list for that tribute video where my name never appeared. I didn't add a single sentence of explanation. I hit send, and I walked away. My phone started buzzing within 10 minutes. Cousins, aunts, even a second uncle I hadn't heard from in years. "Is this real? Why didn't you say something sooner?" I always had a feeling. I ignored them all. Harlan didn't respond. Not a text, not a call. Just silence, the same tool he always used when control slipped from his hands. Marlene, on the other hand, didn't disappoint. Her reply was short. "This is a family matter. Please retract. No apology, no concern, just demand, masked as etiquette. The Queen trying to command the room while the ceiling caved in." I didn't answer. Beckett vanished. No calls, no texts, no passive-aggressive subtweets. Total blackout, which meant he was scared. Good. By nightfall, I'd shut off my phone and poured myself a glass of red wine. I stood by my window, watching headlights blur across the wet street. Not because I was worried, because I knew exactly what was coming next. At my lawyer's suggestion, we began preparing a formal complaint. Not because I wanted to sue, not because I wanted the money, because sunlight is the best disinfectant, and this rot had spread far enough. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. And this? This was only the first strike. It started with whispers. A partner at a firm I used to clerk for reached out. Casual tone, not casual content. "Hey, Maddie. Heard you've stirred the pot a bit lately. Beckett's been calling around. Says you're going through something. Says you're making things up." I didn't blink. I didn't even blink. "He said what exactly?" I asked calmly. "That you're unwell, carrying family baggage, that this is some kind of breakdown." I laughed. Quiet, dry. "He's trying to paint me as unstable?" "Yeah," he said. "He's shopping the narrative." I thanked him and hung up. Classic Beckett. If you can't bury the truth, discredit the person who speaks it. He was calling favors, leveraging connections, spinning lies. What he didn't realize was that I'd walked through fire to get here, and I wasn't stepping back just because he threw smoke. I called Delphine. She answered on the first ring. "He's trying to smear me," I said. "He's scared." "He should be," she replied. "I was hoping you'd call. There's something else." 10 minutes later, she forwarded me a file I hadn't seen in years, because she'd never sent it. It was a scan of a formal HR complaint from my first job out of law school. I had forgotten about it, or maybe I'd forced myself to. Back then, I thought it was paranoia. I thought I was imagining things, a missing draft, a leaked pitch. The timing had been too perfect, but I couldn't prove anything. Until now. Delphine had saved everything. Email headers, screenshots. Even the log showing Beckett had logged into my personal computer using a remote access app I'd stupidly left open. All while he was helping me set up my home Wi-Fi during a holiday weekend. He had stolen my ideas and pitched them as his own to a competing firm. And it had nearly tanked my career. Delphine's voice cracked slightly. Your father made me promise not to tell you, said it would only make things worse. I regret listening to him. I thanked her. But I didn't call my lawyer. I called a journalist. A woman I knew, who had built her career on stories just like this. Truth wrapped in betrayal. Scandal sitting beneath silk ties and trust funds. She didn't ask for proof. She just said, send everything. By morning, the headline was already making its rounds. Finance exec accused of corporate theft. Source alleges family cover-up. Within hours, Beckett's firm went into panic mode. Clients started pulling contracts. His face vanished from the company website. His Instagram went private. Harlan tried calling. Twice. I let it ring. Marlene left a voicemail that was so on-brand, I almost laughed. You've humiliated us. I hope you're happy. This family supported you, and this is how you repay us? Supported me? They couldn't even spell my name right on birthday cards. I sat in my office reading emails from strangers. One aunt finally cracked. I always knew something was wrong. I should have said something. Too late. I wasn't angry anymore, just clear. Beckett could spin stories, but this wasn't a courtroom. This was the court of public opinion, and he'd just lost his jury. That night, I got a message from a former intern. She was fresh out of law school when she worked under me. Quiet, brilliant, overlooked in all the ways I'd been once. Her message read, Thank you. People like you make room for people like me. I didn't smile. Not really. But something inside me settled. Just a little. They thought I'd set fire to the house. I hadn't even raised my voice yet. The next morning, I walked into the county clerk's office with a folder under my arm and history in my hands. The complaint was already prepared. Typed, formatted, and reviewed line by line. Misuse of trust funds, forgery of consent, breach of fiduciary duty. 3 names sat at the top. Harlan Renly, Marlene Renly, Beckett Renly. Attached were everything they thought I'd never find. Notarized bank records, authorization forms with mismatched signatures, and Delphine's signed affidavit verifying the original terms of my mother's will. By noon, the documents were public record, and by 4 p.m., they were accessible to anyone with a Wi-Fi connection and a reason to look. I gave them the truth. What the world did with it wasn't my problem. By evening, Beckett's LinkedIn was gone. His firm had issued a vague statement about a temporary suspension pending internal review, but I already knew what that meant. Harlan's name disappeared from the Veterans Foundation's website. A line added quietly below the board list. Pending ethics investigation. Marlene canceled her beloved charity gala. Out of respect for privacy, the statement said. Right. Sorrel texted me late that night. I didn't know it would go this far. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. You never asked how far it already went for me. She didn't write back. Harlan, though, he finally did. The subject line of his email, You're no longer welcome in this family. There it was, the last brick in the wall they'd spent decades building between us, now handed to me like a souvenir. I opened a new draft. Typed, paused, deleted. Typed again. And then I didn't send it. Instead, I wrote it out on a notepad and read it to myself. You erased me. Now I'm just finishing the job you started. I closed the notebook and turned off my phone. There was nothing left to say to them. No more defense. No more proof. Just distance. The real kind. I sat in my office as the sun dropped behind the city skyline, gold leaking through the blinds. The news sites were still spinning. Articles, reposts, speculation. But inside, everything was still. Not hollow, not numb. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after you've told the truth loud enough to be heard, and no longer care who believes it. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner at my place. Nothing fancy. Just roast chicken, roasted carrots, and a bottle of wine I didn't pick for the label. Delphine came early with apple pie and her quiet, comforting presence. One of my interns showed up with her girlfriend and nervous laughter, unsure if they were overdressed or underexperienced. A friend from my running group brought garlic bread and stories that didn't involve lawsuits or betrayals. We sat around my kitchen table, small, scratched, real. No place cards, no veiled jabs, no toasts pretending to be compliments. We passed food. We talked about books, terrible movies, inside jokes. There was no pecking order, no power plays, just people, just connection. After dessert, Delphine helped me rinse dishes. She didn't say much, but she didn't have to. Her eyes were steady, proud. The next morning, I drove alone to a quiet cemetery on the edge of town. I brought no flowers, just a letter. I sat at my mother's grave and read it aloud, even though I wasn't sure I believed in any version of the afterlife. I did it, Mom. I kept my spine. I kept your name clean. I'm not in their house anymore. I'm not under their thumb. The wind moved the leaves around my boots. I folded the letter and tucked it beneath the stone vase, weighted with a small rock. I didn't cry. I just breathed. And then I left. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a voicemail. I didn't need to listen. I saw the name before I deleted it. Marlene. I pressed play anyway, just long enough to catch the tone. You got what you wanted. We lost everything. I hope you're proud. I stopped it. Deleted it. That wasn't pride she heard in my silence. It was peace. They thought I wanted to take something from them. But the truth was simpler. I just needed to get myself back. That night, I sat in bed with a cup of tea and a quiet house. I looked around at the space I'd built. Not perfect, not pristine, but mine. I thought about everything they took, and then everything I reclaimed. Some of the wounds would never heal clean. That's not how it works. But they didn't have to. I didn't need closure to move forward. I just needed clarity. I wouldn't fill the empty places with people who only showed up to take. I chose solitude over illusion, truth over tolerance, peace over pretending. I chose me. They called me ungrateful, but I'm more grateful than ever, grateful that I finally walked away. Sometimes, walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. I spent years trying to earn a place at a table that was never built for me. Tried to prove my worth to people who had already decided who I was. But here's what I've learned. Peace is not given. You create it. Family isn't about blood, it's about respect, truth, and safety. And healing doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means release. If you're carrying weight that doesn't belong to you, let this be your permission to set it down. You're allowed to protect your peace. You're allowed to rewrite your own story. And you don't need anyone's approval to start. So now I'll turn it to you. Have you ever had to walk away from a version of family to find yourself? Do you believe silence keeps peace, or just prolongs harm? If this story hit close to home, or helped you see something more clearly, drop a 1 in the comments, or let me know where you're watching from. If you didn't connect with it, that's okay too. Tell me why. I read everything. And if you're still here, still listening, don't forget to hit subscribe for more stories that speak truth, stir hearts, and remind us we're not alone. Until next time, take care of yourself like someone you love.